Hello everybody. Today we're going to use some of our new Illustrator skills and create an abstract shape composition for your first Illustrator assignment. All right, I've opened up Illustrator and I'm going to create a new document. And let's go ahead and make it letter size, landscape orientation. And you can leave the bleed at 0 and color mode at RGB. Click create. All right, I'm going to reset my palettes. Window, Workspace, Reset Essentials Classic. Okay, and if you remember, you have your scratch board in gray, your collapsed palettes over here on the right, and here's our layers palette right here. I'm going to go ahead and open that up. You have your tool palette over here on the left, and you have your main menu up at the top, as well as your sub menu right here. We have our fill swatches, stroke swatches, stroke weight, stroke profiles, brushes. All right, let's get started. I am going to first get my rectangle tool, and I'm going to draw a rectangle the entire size of the background, and it's going to be my background. All right, so for my shape composition, I could give it a blank or a flat color, or I could play around with some gradients. So what I'm going to do to find my gradients, I'm going to drop down my swatches, and I'm going to go right here to the lower left hand corner. If you hover on it, it says Swatch Library Menu. Let's click that and choose Gradients. And now you're going to see there's a whole bunch of preset gradients that you could use. And I'm going to start with Sky. All right, so then my new palette of gradients popped up, and I can choose to fill with any of these. And these are preset gradients, and I can always go back and kind of edit them. All right, I think that for my shape composition, I'm going to stick with an analogous color scheme, maybe blue, green. So I'll stick with one of these gradients that are kind of blue to light blue. All right, from here I have filled it with a gradient, and now I'm going to go get my gradient tool. It's right here in the layers, in the tool palette. And once you click on the gradient tool, you're going to see the gradient editor, this bar pop up. And you can, change how much of each color, the amount of each color. You can also redraw that bar and say, okay, I'd rather have it vertical, or I'd rather have it diagonal. All right, so that's going to be my background layer. So I'm going to go ahead and lock this layer. There's an empty space right here next to the eyeball in the layers palette. I'm going to click it, and now there's a little lock symbol so that I don't accidentally keep selecting that rectangle. Next, I'm going to add a brand new layer. I'm going to click on that little square with the plus sign on it, and that's going to be my new layer where I put the rest of my shapes. I'm going to go ahead and collapse the sky palette because I don't need it right now. And just move the layers over a little bit. All right, from here, I'm going to play around with some more shape tools and creating an abstract composition. So I'm going to hold down on my shape tools, go to that flyout arrow and tear off the palette. And from here, start making my composition. Okay, do remember that the last fill I used was the gradient, so I am getting some more gradients here, and I'll go ahead and I think stick with some of those for now. And I'm using my black selection tool to move them around. Right now they actually have a black stroke, which is which is good. I could leave that, or I could play around with adding a different one. I'm going to build a little asymmetry over here and stack some of these off to the side. All right, now keep in mind, if I wanted to, I could move the stacking order of these. Right now they're stacked in the order that I made them. Let's say I want to bring this one above the big one though. I'll click it and go to Edit, Object, and Arrange, and Bring Forward. Now if I bring forward, it just brings it forward one object. If I bring to front, it brings it on top of all the objects. So I said bring forward. Now it is above the larger one right there. I can also play around with, their sizes, making them bigger and smaller, rotating them. I could play around with their transparencies. Let's do that. So I'm going to select this one and go to opacity and reduce the opacity a little bit and make it transparent. How about I'll do that with another one. All right, so now they're all a little transparent. How about one more just for size, and I'll go ahead and reduce the opacity there too. All right, from here, I think I'm going to play around with some paintbrushes. So I'm going to get my brush tool, and I'm going to drop down my brushes right here. And I do have some default brushes, but I'd like to see some more. I'm going to go to the libraries. Whenever you see those little stacked books, that means there's more presets, and there's definitely some more brushes. I'm going to drop that down, and how about take a look at some of these artistic brushes. There's calligraphic brushes, chalk, charcoal, pencil, ink, paintbrush, scroll pen, and watercolor. I'm going to check out the watercolors. It pops up as a new palette. And I can actually, pull this palette down and take a look at all the different watercolors there are. All right, right now I have a gradient as my fill, so I'm just going to switch that to a different color as my fill and paint a little bit. All right, now notice this brush kind of defaulted to none. So let's try again. Let's see if I can change the color. There it is. And that's the fill, by the way. So I'm going to put none on the fill, and I'm going to give the stroke a color because this is a brush. So I'm going to stroke. There we go. And back to my brush tool. All right, so I'm just going to kind of have some fun layering some of these brushes. And the nice part about Illustrator is, let's say you don't want one of these strokes, but you want the other ones. If I hover on them, see how my smart guides light up the path, and it even says path in pink. And you can say, okay, I don't really want this one. I'm going to click it and delete it. Or I don't want this one. Click and delete. All right, you can also edit any brush stroke. So I could go get my white direct select arrow and click on the path. And now notice I have anchor points and direction handles. These are called direction handles. And I can actually edit the shape of the path. I can make it longer. I can make it shorter. I can make it curvier. And that's for any of these paint strokes, because everything in Illustrator is a path, and you can edit any path by using that white direct select arrow. And same thing goes for shapes. So for instance, I could grab one of my polygons here, and I can click away to deselect, hover until my smart guides tell me I have a anchor point, and now I can edit this shape. All right, I can do that for any of these shapes. Don't forget you have the rounded corners too. I can round the corners on some of my polygons, or I could edit the shape completely. All right, and looks like my brush defaulted again to black, so I'm going to go back. I'm going to select it with my black arrow, then go back and grab my color that I want. Maybe I'll grab a different color this time. Maybe a green this time. Okay, so I can keep playing around with some shapes, abstract lines. Here's my line segment tool. Maybe I want to play around with some of those abstract shapes. What about one of my spiral tools? All right, so I've got a spiral here, and I can make it bigger. I can make it smaller. I can, right now it's stroked with a green stroke 1 point. How about I'll increase the stroke weight, and I'm going to change the profile from thin to thick to thin. And how about I'll even change that color, sticking with my blue, green, kind of turquoise color scheme. All right, and I'll click away to deselect. Do I like that? I could play around with stroking it with a brush instead. What's it look like with the watercolor brush? All right, I can also edit that spiral. I can move it around. I could even make it transparent. All right, maybe I'll do my star, but maybe make it a little more abstract and give it some more points. And increase the stroke weight. Right now it has no fill, so I'm going to get it. Maybe move that around. Okay, maybe I'll even duplicate it. I'm going to select it with the black arrow, and I'm going to hold down Alt or Option, click and drag. Play around with those. Okay, from here I might go ahead and add some more shapes, maybe even a blend, and show that I can manipulate my shapes with my white direct select, use the paintbrush, use different opacities, change the stacking order, add a gradient in the background. All right, continue with your abstract shape composition.